Welcome. Today we're going on a bit of a journey. We're going to look at the book of Genesis, but maybe not in the way you're used to. We're going to explore an analysis that reimagines it as a kind of framework, one that might just align with some pretty deep scientific and philosophical ideas. It suggests that right there in the opening verses, there's a structured method for creation, a really unique theory of where everything came from, and maybe even a solution to that age-old paradox of free will.
So to get started, we really have to appreciate just how radical the first line of Genesis actually was. You see, for most of human history, the default belief, even among brilliant thinkers, was that the universe was eternal, that it had no beginning. Even Albert Einstein, back in 1917, he argued for a static, infinite universe. So this idea of a single moment of beginning, well, that was a pretty fringe concept, something easily dismissed.
Okay, with that in mind, let's dive into the how of creation. This analysis we're looking at suggests it wasn't just a series of random commands. Instead, it was a structured, almost repeatable method. You might even say it looks a lot like a scientific process.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. You know that familiar line, there was evening and there was morning? Well, if you look at the Hebrew roots, things get a little different. The root for evening, areb, can also mean mixture. And the root for morning, boger, can mean to inquire or to examine. So suddenly, the story transforms into this three-step creative cycle. Step 1, declare a new mixture of properties. Step 2, examine the result. And Step 3, number the era to keep track of the sequence. It starts to sound less like an ancient story and a whole lot more like a cosmic lab report.
So if that was the method, what about the stuff it was made from? You know, the raw materials. The common idea is creation ex nihilo. Creation from absolutely nothing. But this analysis suggests the text itself points to a completely different starting point.
And that concept is called theoriae ex potentia. It's Latin for to become from potential. The idea is that the universe wasn't just summoned out of a total void, but was actually organized from some kind of raw, pre-existing potential. And what's wild is how well this lines up with a basic law of physics, the conservation of energy, which, says energy can't be created or destroyed, only changed from one form to another.
And you can see a hint of this right there in Genesis 1:2. Before anything is created, the text describes this formless state, darkness over waters. In this way of looking at it, these waters aren't literal H2O. They're a metaphor for that intangible, raw potential that everything was about to be formed from. So the stage was already set. The materials were there, just waiting to be put together.
Okay, so we have the how and the what of creation. Now the analysis shifts to the fundamental rules of this new universe. And here we move from the physical to the metaphysical, starting with something we all take for granted, the nature of time itself.
And here's Einstein again with this absolutely mind-bending quote. He's saying that our linear experience of time, past, present, future, is just an illusion, a really stubborn one. What if the only moment that actually exists is right now? In that view, the past is just a collection of evidence in the now, and the future is just a prediction we make from the now. Grasping this idea is the key to unlocking a huge philosophical puzzle.
And here is that puzzle. It's a big one. If God is omniscient, meaning He knows everything that has ever happened and everything that ever will happen, then how can our choices possibly be free? It just feels like we're all actors in a play that's already been written. But what if the future doesn't actually exist yet to be known?
This analysis proposes a solution called concurrent indeterminism, and it works like this. God's all-knowing power isn't about knowing a fixed future, because a fixed future simply doesn't exist. Instead, God knows everything that exists in the now. The universe is built by its very nature with a kind of openness, with real possibilities, and that allows for genuine choice, all while God's knowledge of all present reality remains totally complete.
And this is a really crucial difference from some other ideas out there, like open theism, which might say that God has to choose to limit His own knowledge for us to be free. Concurrent indeterminism says, no limitation needed. God is still fully omniscient. It's the universe itself that's designed to be a place of real, unscripted choice.
So, this idea of a designed, indeterminate universe, it brings us right up to the edge of what we know today, which leads to our final section, the current frontiers of science and the really big, unanswered questions that still have us stumped.
The analysis points to three profound mysteries where science, for all of its incredible power, still basically hits a brick wall. First, the ultimate origin of the universe itself. Second, abiogenesis, the puzzle of how life first sparked from non-living chemicals. And finally, the origin of consciousness,
That simple yet scientifically baffling fact that you are aware, right now, listening to this. Let's just zoom in for a second on the origin of life, because it has this famous chicken and egg problem. See, to build proteins, which are the building blocks of life, a cell needs this tiny biological machine called a ribosome. Its job is to read the genetic instructions.
But here's the paradox. The ribosome itself is made of protein. You need the machine to build the very thing the machine is made of. This kind of codependence makes the spontaneous beginning of life one of the absolute deepest and most improbable challenges in all of science.
And that brings us to the last mystery, consciousness. Science can explain the wiring in our brains that supports it, but it has no explanation for how self-awareness just appears out of inert matter. So this whole analysis leaves us with one last, really provocative question. What if consciousness isn't something that emerges from the universe, but is actually a fundamental property of it, just like space or time? Maybe, just maybe, the deepest answers are waiting for us when we're willing to reconsider our most basic assumptions.